Ja, welkom 01. Indeed, my talk today is about making penetration testing auditable again. For the people that know me, of course, there are a lot of cats in my presentation. You might think that doesn't serve a purpose, but you might be wrong there. Okay, I'm Brenno de Winter. I'm currently part of the CISO team of the Ministry of Health, Welfare and something else. And today we're going to talk about penetration testing, and let's have a quick look about towards what the legislator is requiring from us. And one of the big things that is happening this month is that NIS2 will come into effect, into full effect. Also in the Netherlands, I know that a lot of people out here that think that it doesn't start. Well, it does start. We don't have a Dutch law yet. That's a different story. But we're also getting the Cyber Resilience Act when you are developing software, and these laws basically are shouting for assurance. On the normative side, we have got frameworks. For the non-Dutchies, the ISO 20007 1, 2, 3. For the ones that are working within the Dutch government, we've got the baseline informatiebeveiliging overheid, which is basically the 27001 and 2. And in healthcare, we've got the 7510, which is more or less the same, only the focus is a little bit different. If we use software or if we make software and we fuck it up big time and people are involved, the GDPR kicks into effect, and the GDPR has an article, Article 82, that basically says, like, if you fuck up, you pay for the damage. So, introducing software has liabilities, and those liabilities you want to mitigate. If you look specifically at the NIS2, I'm not going through all the laws, don't worry, but if you're looking at the NIS2, you have to show more clarity. At this point, basically said like, okay, I've got this piece of paper, it has the word pen test on it, I give it to an auditor, and that's basically end of the story. Now, the law says that you have to deliver underlying evidence. So the pen test itself might not be enough anymore. And the question is a pen test basically showing that things are fine, or is it a proof that the director of the organization is in control? Well, maybe neither at this moment. Maybe a pen test doesn't answer that question. If you look at a couple of companies in the Netherlands, and I did my best, Auditable did its best to translate it to proper English, then you see all sorts of statements that basically, if you take them together, oh, why is this still in Dutch? I did make a mistake here, apparently. But basically, every company is saying something else, showing the severity of IT problems, making infrastructure proof of sound, show the state of security, show vulnerabilities. None of these companies is saying, give assurance that the basics are in place. And that's a big thing. I think I don't know why it's all in Dutch all of a sudden, because I did translate them all over the last 3 days. What we see happening is that with the pen test, a lot of companies are claiming that they do magic. I really have had them sitting down and say, yeah, we can't tell what we did because it's magic. And what we did is a company secret. What we do with a pen test is not something you can use against us. It's similar to buying a house in the Netherlands. You've got these companies that will help you, and they will come to your house and they will say and have a look at your house and say like, okay, this is structurally proper built. I bought a house in Amstelveen, and the guy said, well, the roof, you might in the next 5 years have to replace like 10 or 12 tiles, but that's just about it. 4 months later, I could replace my entire roof. And there's nothing you can say about that. So, the customer, and this is always a problem in communication, the customer has a total different expectation, and they're filled with techno-optimism. Hackers have been looking at my website, so it must be good. They couldn't penetrate it, so it must be perfect. Well, we did a pen test, so everything must be okay. And we're jumping around that everything is okay. So we've got the company on one hand saying, basically what we offer is your insight in your problems, and the customer perceiving it as being assurance. The reality is that we are non-compliant, not pen-tested, and unknown risk accepted. Because if you don't know what your risks are, you accept risks that you don't realize. 6 months later, let's say, you're a city, you did a pen test on the infrastructure. After 6 months, all of a sudden, your entire city is hacked, all your data is ransomwared, and that's basically the end of the story. And again, you can shout as much. We did an infrastructure pen test and there were no significant findings, but at the end of the day, your data is gone. This incident, and a couple of people will know which incident I'm talking about, was for me a life-changing event. It was the first time that I realized that the board of directors or the major did everything right from her perspective. But on the other hand, she still loosed out. Hold that thought. For the next couple of years, there will be a lot new laws that will be introduced, and I can summarize all European laws that are coming our way very simple. Europe is saying, fuck you to magic. Europe is saying, make proper risk assessments and deal with the risks. All the laws that you will see passing will have these elements in it. I see people make pictures, but the slides will be available in full English ultimately. And if you join the group, you're part of making them, and then there are your slides as well. So compliance shouldn't be looking somebody in the eyes and saying, okay, it must be good because the eyes are so blue. And this is what we're used to this. We've got SOC 1 and SOC 2, Type 1 and Type 2, design and existence or operational effectiveness. We're used to this in security. So it's nothing really new, and it shouldn't be. So we should help the auditor. We've got hackers to look. That means that we've got no established level of knowledge. We can't use that. We take inspiration for standards. That means we do non-standardized tests. What we do is magic. No, what you do is dark magic. What a pen test is, well, that's what we do. So we don't have a framework. That's strange, because we do have a framework. The broader question is, what do we do with an audit? Is that testing a claim? Is it looking back? Is it looking forward? Is it, I'm convinced that it will be okay someday? What do we want to steer towards? If I have 2 cars, one is 23 years old, one is 21 years old, and every year they get a test. and they get basic tests. The brakes, the lights, the tires, that type of stuff. What they don't do is electrical. So it might be you get into your car after a positive test and the car burst into flames. But probably what will happen is that I will go back to the garage and say like, what the F did you do? Why didn't you warn me of this? Even though it isn't one of the formal tests. And I hear a lot that in pen testing you can't do standardized tests. That's funny because there are total books written about how to do that. And OWASP has a couple of very cool testing guides that basically describe exactly what you should do. And I always hear like, yeah, but there's always a test that doesn't apply to this subject or to this scope. Well, okay, let's take that test out then. But in general, it's like testing your basics. What is being tested to my car is reproducible. It's reproducible in a way that as soon as the garage is finished and they say like, okay, I certify this car, they've got a certain chance that the government will step in and say like, okay, we'll redo your test. And they could lose their license over it. So they do it properly. For pen test, this is basically some basic surgery and you fixed it. Cut out the magic, provide more certainty, and deliver the evidence. That would basically turn everything around. So this is what we did, and we is quite a growing group. I'll talk about that later. First, a new problem. Because of all the magic, there is no definition of a pen test. I've hired Victor de Paus, who has been in IT law for 43 years. He went through all Dutch law, all the European laws, and there's a lot in cybersecurity defined in law, but the word pen test is not one of them. And this is part of the issue. So we came with quite a group with a definition. You might debate about it, but at least we've got the definition now. And if you think this can be better, come and help, please. Second thing, okay, let's dark magic. If you're a hacker, if you know stuff, you probably can prove that you know stuff. So there are certain exams you can take. By the way, we didn't make this up. There is this Dutch schedule called CCV. They've got this wonderful schedule. They had education criteria. We copied that because why find out the will yourself when somebody else did already good job? So you have to have certain amount of skills and you need to be able to prove it. Well, the cool thing about skills is nowadays you can check them online. Get back to that later. The other thing is if you've got a testing guide, I've got controls. Basically, I can do a claim towards security and then the test will prove if it's correct or not. So I've got design, existence, and operating effectiveness. And if these words do not say anything, then you're probably not an auditor. If you're an auditor, you think like happy. So what we did, we found a minimum set of testing guides, benchmarks, shit you could use that is already there and you should use actually. And we put that into a bunch of controls that basically say like, this is what you've got to do. This is how you can validate it as an auditor. This is the value of this criteria. This is what you're missing out on if you don't use it. And the last one is, if you want to do procurement, this is how to do procurement. And one of the things that is different to a lot of companies right now is if you get a report and you do it according to this scheme, then you are allowed to deliver the report to other parties to prove that you did your work wrong. Sorry. Or wrong, But I meant right, of course. Now you can still say like, okay, but I don't want to share my pen test. Well, I understand that. We'll deal with that in a second. So now, in the whole bigger scheme of things, you've got your vulnerability scans, your penetration test. Now that we've got a firm basis, basically the next thing you can do is red teaming. And if you do red teaming without a basic pen test, I've done that a couple of times, you're throwing stuff over. It's funny when you do it, but it's not funny if you're on the receiving side. You've got your code review, your regular security assessments, and your audits. So I'm not claiming it's replacing everything. It's just the technical audit side that you've got your basics in place. After penetration testing, you can hand the penetration test with all the evidence to an auditor, and they can write a report based on that test. So if you don't want to share your pen test because you think it's too sensitive or it discloses too much, then at least an auditor can say like, okay, this guy did a proper job, or this girl did a proper job. And you can send that around. In the Netherlands, we've got a couple of interesting things. One is that we've got cities, and they have to go through an NCA audit. That is basically an audit that security is more or less okay. For that audit, they have to do pen tests. So what we see happen is 346 times the same pen test on the same software being executed, because you need to be compliant. This would solve that. The second thing is that I see pen tests being ordered on software that has already been pen tested internally, because if somebody externally does it, then it's more assurance. Well, if you want assurance, go to an auditor. That's the logic place to go. And don't be scared, we are left out on work. For the people here that know Stephen Covey, I believe in the abundance of work available in the IT security industry. And I don't think in scarcity. So long story short, we finally get time to test shit that we should have tested years ago. We call it the methodology for information security research with audit value. In Dutch, that is de methodiek voor informatiebeveiligingsonderzoek met auditwaarde. And you abbreviate it as MIAO. And this is the logo, and this is my cat Otis. Yeah, Otis is and sweet. So I already said you get a set of controls. You get official procedural report by an auditor. We deliver a model pen test report so that if you're all alone and you're a pen tester, you're not on your own. We give you all the legal information, and we'll make an advisory guide which will be available on October 18th as a book for everybody who wants it. And last but not least, we have also things included. You see pieces of a pen test report. We also thought about how to make things HUFT-proof. For instance, if an administrator goes like, no, you're not allowed to get shell on a system, it's no longer the pen tester's problem, we'll make it a manager's problem. I basically say like, we tried to test it, but we weren't granted access. So basically, we don't know what the status is, and it gets a red color. And here's something very interesting. Managers hate red. Even though managers are mostly red in behavior, they hate a red color for some reason. So we'll make it a them issue. So we thought about a lot of things. Probably we forgot a lot of things. That makes it easier for you to execute your work. It is now more measurable because you know what test you are doing. You know, I recently spoke to a company, said like, yeah, we do a 50,000 euro pen test. And when the money is gone, then we stop. If I were a company and I would hear this, my hourly rate would cyclically go like really up. Because that's less work, more money. And then we say like, next year we'll look at different things. That's measurable now. So hopefully we are looking all at the same. And we have got clarity on what we do, what it means. It's verifiable. And hopefully we stop doing the same tests more than once on the exact same software. And that altogether helps you to be fact-based in control, hopefully. And we're doing this, I'm doing this, we are doing this at the Ministry of Health. But throughout the year, I found a lot of friends that started to help out and look with us, and also are part of the procurement and buying power that we have together. Because I've seen in the corona times, when you do things together or in bigger numbers, companies are more inclined to help out to do it in the same way. And this is not a complete list, because there are a lot of organizations that say like, okay, I can't be on the slide, but I'm still pretty proud that I've got a whole bunch of friends that are at least helping. And not the least of that are DVD, the Academy, OWASP, because it's their standards I try to abuse the most, because they are public. And that makes it easier. That is basically what I had to share. So I would like to open the floor for questions if there's any time left. I've got no clue how much time I spent.
There is definitely time left for some questions. So are there any questions from the audience? Give me 1 second.
Yes.
I could try.
No, we start sweet, and then if it's a wrong question, then we hit you in the face. Yeah. Talk in the microphone so that everybody can hear. Hey. Is there an on-off button on it?
Let's fix it with the mic. Sorry.
Yeah, then you're going to do sports.
So, a thing I'm pretty familiar with when working in security, right, is when you're measuring the, how bad a vulnerability is, right? You talked about the CVSS vectors in this framework that you're mentioning, and I was interested in knowing how it correlates. For example, how do you compare CVSS version 2 and 1 or 3, for example? Because you can't really convert between them because it's not really defined. Yeah,
we've defined CVSS version 4 because that also gives you context information as well. So that in the measurement of how severe it is a very good question for the ones that don't know what the common vulnerability scoring system is. When you do a pen test and you have findings, we from a technical perspective tend to say like, okay, this is the end of the world. Always. So for me, every finding is critical. Now we've got the scoring system to say like, okay, we give you a number between 0 and 10, 10 being like critical, and 0 being like purely informational. And we're using indeed the common vulnerability scoring system. The last version, 4.0, also gives a lot of context information. For instance, if you've got a computer that is never attached to the internet, the same finding might get a lower number than, of course, a public-facing thing. So we use 4.0. Is that enough answer to your question?
Yeah, I like it.
First of all, thanks for putting in the effort into making pen testing more measurable. What does Meow fix that is not fixed by either Certified Secure or OWASP ASVS?
Oh, yeah, that's a cool one. OWASP ASVS is a standard. Can you give me a second? Then I'll pull up a slide where it is exactly saying what ASVS is. And that is this slide. If you look at ASVS, it is built for culture building, process maturing, and it is used for putting down requirements. When you do validation, you've got different guides. So the use of the ASVS is a different use. And this is a good question because there's something else. I see a lot of pen tests that talk about the OWASP top 10. We are not educating because that is purely meant for educating. It is not meant to test. For instance,
it's basically a popularity contest with the top 10. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've had a look at it on the ASVS because that's what I thought as well in the beginning. But then I got a firm lesson from OWASP, like, stop doing that.
But shouldn't you always verify against your requirements?
Depends on what you are verifying. It's a good question because I'm just writing a book called The Validation Crisis. Because this is a big thing. Yes, you should, but for the testing guides, the technical testing guides, OWASP did something else. And that's all, of course, interconnected. So yeah, this is why we end up with different testing books. But we were at the same page as you were in the beginning. Yeah, and that was kind of a shock to me because that was in my head for years.
Will be the last question, I think.
All right, thanks. So you rightfully point out that we should stop testing the exact same software for the same issues. Of course, there's no such thing as the exact same software. Small modifications are being made all the time. So do you have thoughts on that? And most particularly, whose responsibility will it be to identify when a component has to be retested? The pen testers or the organizations?
Oh, you say you're asking multiple questions at once. Who's responsible? And for all the CISOs in this room, listen very carefully. Management, especially in the law, management, administration is responsible for security. It's not a CISO job. It's a CISO job to facilitate the process, to watch if things are going right, but it's a management job. So management should decide if they're working on software all the time.